All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then,
Conversations from the Dark Side.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth and final episode for the month of October of Conversations from the Dark Side. I am Amigo Aaron. I'll be your MC for this evening. Joined tonight by my good buddy, Jack Flack, a.k.a. Rob Flack O'Hara, and a cast of thousands, because we want you to be our co-pilots, as it were. We are open on all fronts. You can drop us a line at the Darkside at email.com with any ghost stories you might have or anything you've got. You can also call our hotline at 304-397-0810 and leave a text or voice message to our automated 24-hour CFDS hotline. It's a hotline, folks. Call in, say hi. Plus, what we'd like you to do is come in and speak with us on Discord at bit.ly/conversations-from-the-dark-side. A lot of dashes, but we'd love to get you to dash on in so we can talk to you. Tonight, being so close to Halloween, we thought it would be fun to talk about some of your favorite ghost stories. Ghost stories. We'll also take anything you've got in the realm of Halloween traditions. Was Halloween better when you were a kid or worse? Did you enjoy it more as an adult? Did you have different traditions in your neck of the woods or even in your home country? We'd love to hear about it. We would love to have you pop on in. So, with all that in mind, we will take a quick commercial break, and then we will be back with some sweet action. Stand by.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side. You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Conversations from the Dark Side. Again, I am Amigo Aaron. Today, we've got a couple people joining us to chat straight away. First, I want to once again introduce my good buddy, my good pal, and my companion these past couple shows, Rob Flack O'Hara. What's up, Rob?
Going on? I was just telling some of the people here in the behind the curtain, I'm your not as good looking sidekick, but the one with better bandwidth at the moment. So here we are once again talking about ghosts and Halloween. I'm excited about tonight's show because, you know, some of the other topics that you had, like messages from beyond the grave, not everybody has a story about that, or, you know, some of the things are pretty specific, but man, I think everybody has a good ghost story. I know I got some ghost stories, and I know that everybody has a story about Halloween. So if you start getting into Halloween stuff, I hope that we get a lot of interaction tonight from everyone.
I hope so as well. And by the way, don't sell yourself short, Flack. I think you are equally hideous to both. I don't think there's either one of you is better looking than the other. So
on a tap dancing, he's going to sing and I'll dance.
Oh, good Lord. Well, it is a horror show. So while we're on the subject of horror, we also have a couple special guests to start us off tonight. One, the Chudley, the Chudster himself, is in the house. What's going on, Frazzled One? He's not in the house. There he comes.
Yeah, I am just hanging out.
Very good, very good. And we also have our good buddy, TSI Matt. What's going on, Matt?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, all right. So, since we've got a little panel going here, let's get it started the right way, and let's start with you, TSI Matt. Have you a good ghost story to share with everyone?
Well, I do have a quick one.
All right, go.
And it was actually one that the Chudley reminded me of last week.
Go ahead.
We were on a one of those tours in Charleston, South Carolina. They do for one of the ghost tours.
Yeah.
And this particular one, you go into one of the old prison. And I was in there, he was kind of looking around. You know, the guy was talking, and all of a sudden he kind of looks at me weird, and I'm like, okay. And goes on, and then a little bit later he kind of pulls me aside, and it's like, can I talk to you for a moment once this is over? And I was a little concerned because I was like, okay. So anyway, after I walk over, and he was like, did you notice anything weird when you were in there? No. He's like, well, I was standing there and someone came up behind you and then disappeared.
Oh.
Like, wow.
That would explain why he was looking at you funny.
Yeah.
Now, the place you were in, what did it have a history of ghostly encounters? Or that particular room, or even the facility?
Yes. I don't know about that particular room, but the facility definitely, because that, like I said, that was the old prison where they did hangings and all kinds of crap.
Do you recall getting any sort of odd feelings or strange sensations?
Not really.
It sort of makes it even spookier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the fact that you looked at someone and he just looked at you funny and would pull you aside, that's double creepy.
Yeah, no kidding.
That is real bizarre. Well, that's a good one to get you tingling right out of the gate. Now, did you say Chad was Chad with you on that one?
Yeah, I was gonna add also. I don't know if you're too familiar with Charleston, South Carolina, but basically they don't tear things down; they renovate, and basically like anybody that has been buried in the past in that town, they're still there, and they built the town like on top of them.
So I vacationed down there, and it is a kind of an old timey, kind of a creepy type of town.
Yeah, but like for example, that prison, they were like, yeah, they used to bury some of the people like out here after they hung them.
That's no good.
It definitely had a vibe.
Chudley, while we got you on here, I was talking to you this week a little bit, and you actually had sort of a ghostly encounter this week, did you not?
I don't know if it was ghostly, but it was definitely weird.
Tell us about it.
Well, I happened to be down in the basement at the time, and I just I had gone down there to check some stuff and basically just kicked back for a little bit, and I was just sitting in the lounge chair, just kind of relaxing after a yet another fun day at work, just letting the air from the ceiling fan blow on me, and I heard what sounded like a phone ringing, like if like when you make a call and you hear the phone ring before somebody picks it up. I heard it one time, and I was like, well, that was kind of weird. So I was listening real hard and kept kind of quiet a second time. Now, exactly what that was, I don't know, but I checked everywhere around in the basement. I checked out back. I checked to see if there might have been anybody standing around with like a phone trying to make a call or something. But I couldn't explain it because there's not, down in the basement, you can't hear anything in front of the house, and the next street over is too far away, so I couldn't have heard anything over there.
And you live alone, so there was no one else in the house. That is bizarre. No. That's real strange. Do you recall how you felt at the time? Were you clear of thought? Were you thinking of anything in particular?
Just thought that's really, really odd.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really get a vibe like there was somebody in the room, but I went so far as to actually pick up all the phones and see, because I had my landline disconnected a while back because I don't use it, and I thought, well, maybe something's up with the land. Nothing, no signal on the landlines, and my cell phone was upstairs.
Bizarre. Have you? Is that the first time you've had any sort of weird encounter in your house?
Well, occasionally I'll get like I don't know. I just feel like sometimes like things are off. I mean, nothing quite like that. I did have something which I still can't figure out. There was sound like after that the same evening, and basically something fell in the kitchen, and I had no reason for it to fall, and I still can't figure that one out.
Hey, you never know.
There was like a
poltergeist activity, brother.
I don't know, but it was just kind of odd.
Now,
You know, I'm a jumpy kind of person, I think. And,
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to get trained, you know, with a wife and 2 kids and 2 cats. So, you know, if I hear something fall in the other room or there's a noise or something, I've trained myself to go, well, somebody did that. I'll go figure out what it was, you know, but somebody was responsible for it. But if I lived by myself and heard stuff like that, I don't know, man. I feel like do you walk, Chad? You walk around your house like with a big machete or something? Like I feel like I'm just walking around with a bat all the time or something.
I'm basically the type that if I don't necessarily believe if there's otherworldly or other realm type things going on. I mean, I don't believe everything is like out to get you. I mean, there could, I suppose, be nicer spirits or nicer visitors or something like that. I mean, not everything is hostile.
I'll tell you what. I lived up a mud mountain by myself, and for the other people that visit up there, it could get pretty creepy up there because you're on the mountain. There's a lot of forest and woods around you, but it's also right beside the really nasty part of Charleston. So occasionally you get some drunks or some gangbangers or some drug guys come up the street, or thieves or whatnot. But anyway it went, it was so creepy. I couldn't stand to be up there and have it be quiet because you always heard stuff rustling out in the woods or under the house. And so one of my house rules is that there were always noise in the house. It was almost the TV or the radio or something was always running because I couldn't handle, because I'd been spooked so many times up there that it was too much for me. And I consider myself a fairly brave person, but it was a pretty scary up there many nights, including a few times where I would hear people outside talking, or like one night in particular, I could hear a girl asking for help outside, and when I went out there was no one there, and that was super creepy. I never got over that one, and it wasn't on the mountain much longer after that, because you didn't get a lot of visitors up the mountain. Just to get up there, it was really difficult. So it was, that was tough.
I was just thinking about something Chad said. You know, one of the great things I'm looking forward to after death is that I no longer have to have a cell phone with me 24/7. So the fact that the spirit still has cell phone, that just wipes so much out of my hopes right there.
No kidding, that would be super creepy. Well, Flack, you haven't chimed in. What have you ever had a real odd encounter you want to share?
You know, I've had a few, none like in my house. You know, any place that I've lived, I don't think. I remember when I was in like 5th or 6th grade. You know, when you're at that time where you're just starting to meet people that like maybe lived in other neighborhoods and stuff. You're like, oh, I'll spend the night at your house, or this guy will come. Like people you didn't know that well, you know.
Yeah.
Like you just knew him from school. And I remember I spent the night at this guy's house, and I have like 3 memories of that night. One is that he had an television. We played in television all night long. And 2 is that is the first time that I ever sat up with someone and watched movies on scrambled cable. Like we watched Porky's and Children of the Corn.
Was it still scrambled when you watched them?
Yes.
Yeah, that old stick.
You know,
oh yeah, I've been there.
Almost line up and go, and you know where you could see, and then it would kind of go back. You know?
Oh yeah.
But the biggest memory of that night was that his parents went out. There was like I think like a neighborhood card game. Like they would go play cards or something. The parents would, and so it was just me and this kid in his house. And he told me, he said, "Now I got to tell you that there may be a ghost in this house." And I don't remember exactly how he sold it to me, but he said sometimes when I'm here by myself, I'll hear weird things from the kitchen or from the garage. Go look, and I don't see anything. And I was like, all right, what's this guy up to, And we were in the living room playing in television, and there was a crash from the kitchen, and we went in there, and there was dried spaghetti everywhere. And I guess what happened is that a cupboard had opened, and there was like a container that was holding dried spaghetti, and it had tipped over. But I mean, that can't just happen from normal gravity. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, that's weird.
It wouldn't just open, and the spaghetti thing. And plus, it was also weird because I'd only seen dried spaghetti in like a Kraft macaroni and cheese box or something, like So, but they had some sort of container, I guess, where they kept their spaghetti in. But I just walked in and I just saw the spaghetti all over the counter and the floor, and I was like, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's the old ghost," and he picked it all up, and I was like, I mean, there's no way he did it. Like he couldn't, pull a string or something. I mean, we were in the other room playing in television, and it just boggled me, like how did that? Like I mean, you would think that. I mean, God help us if that's the best thing we have to do in the afterlife is to go to people's houses and tip their spaghetti over, like.
I never want to be so comfortable with a ghost in my house. I'm just like, that's that crazy ghost, like a sitcom. Da-da-da-da, and you go to commercial because that's no good.
But that was the only thing that happened the whole time we were there. But I guess the thing that is like what you said is that he was so nonchalant about it, that he was like, "Oh, that wacky ghost," and and then we just picked it up and went back to playing. And he's, eating me at baseball on television. He's like, "You're not playing." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm looking over my shoulder for a ghost, you dum-dum."
No kidding, man. That is jacked up. I want to go to, speaking of ghost stories, I got a video sent over to me this week from our old pal Hermsky. And I want you guys to watch it. I haven't watched it yet because I wanted to save it for the show. And Hermsky is going to talk about an experience he had with ghosts. So we're going to check it out right now. If you guys will watch along with me, we'll give this a shot. I'm going to fire it up right now.
Hello. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story about myself. Back in my childhood days, quite a spooky event that I encountered. I must have been about 6 or 7 years old, and for a couple of weeks I witnessed strange things happening in my bedroom. Now, on my wall, every night I used to see a shadow man walk across my wall. Now, the best way to describe this shadow man is like, the Pelican Crossings, the don't walk, do walk signs you get on roads. It's the like the walking man symbol, but very much like a grey shadow. And every night he would appear on my wall, walk across my wall, do something different every day. Sometimes he'll be walking on his own, another day he'll be carrying a balloon, another day he'd be walking his dog. Now, this went on for a couple of weeks. I could never really explain how it happened. Every time I spoke to my parents about it, they said I was imagining things or I must have been dreaming. Well, maybe that was the case, but back then I was adamant this was happening. One night, the usual stick man appeared, started to walk across my wall, and in the opposite direction a shadow car came along. Now the shadow car headed straight towards my shadow man and ran him over, and I never saw him again since that day. All the animations, all the shadow events, all the spooky nights just stopped after he was killed by a hit and run vehicle on my wall. Crazy. How do you explain that? Until later on, something else happened about 30 years later. It was a Halloween event, and the whole family met back up at Mum and Dad's house, and we all enjoy a bit of a spooky get together on Halloween, and we do some quite spooky, strange things. And this particular evening, we decided to have a bit of a science, and we all sat around a table and all held hands and started making, you know, suggestions to try and see if there's anybody out there, or if anybody wants to make contact with us. And, you know, we just treated this with a bit of fun. The kids love doing this sort of thing. They love getting spooked out. And we started to having a chat and asking if anybody was there. And all of a sudden the lights started to flicker. And it did freak us out a little bit, but we just went along with it, and we carried on. And all of a sudden the lights just went out, just dead. It just went pitch black. Now at this point we thought, well, we need to stop this now because something isn't right. And we lost contact with the chain of hands, and we just let go of everything. And then all of a sudden the lights just came back on, you know, the whatever had happened was gone. However, as the lights came on, in the wall opposite me where I sat, the Shadow Man was on that wall. So as the lights, only for a split second, so as the lights came back on, you just see the Shadow Man fading away. Just that split second as he was there, as if he was there the whole time the lights were out, as if he'd made contact, and that was a person that was trying to reach out to us. So it was quite spooky, really, at the time. And I didn't really discuss this with family. I'm the only one that saw the image on the wall, because that's the way I was looking at it. And, you know, it was only on there for a split second, so I really did keep that to myself. But I did know at the back of my head, maybe this was connected. Now, the funny thing was, it was at the same property where it originally happened when I was a child, in my bedroom, and we were back at my mum's house, and the same encounter happened again. Since then, I've had no other encounters at all. Is it part of the imagination? Is it, you know, was it a dream? I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think? You know, let me know. Anyway, thank you for listening. And oh, by the way, great show, by the way. I'm really enjoying it, just up my street. Shame I can't watch it live because it is over in the UK, probably early hours in the morning, and I don't really fancy watching something like that just before I go to bed. But well done, guys. I think it's a terrific show. Anyway, take care. See you all soon. Bye.
Well, there you have it. Good stuff there from Hermsky. What you guys think of that one?
You know, I was just telling the chat just now, I'm sitting at home by myself.
Yeah.
The lights are out except for in my room. Everybody's out, and I was doing okay, and now I'm looking for Shadow Man. So great. Thanks for that story.
I particularly like the part where the Shadow Man got ran over by the Shadow car. I did not see that coming. I have heard of I've listened to a lot of radio and watched a lot of TV. I've never ever seen anyone say something like that. That's
Where
the
was the Shadow ambulance?
No, clearly, it's kind of disheartening to know that in the Shadow world, people still can't drive. That's the kind of the bummer of the whole thing. Listen, we're going to take a minute to digest that. We'll take a quick break. I've got another caller ready to come in, and I know this fellow is a storyteller. We're going to get him in here and unleash him on you guys. We will be back in 2 shakes. Stand by for more Conversations from the Darkside.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
Just a gravel star on a mountain road. From all the tales I've been told, there's a monstrous ape soaked in sap atop a genuine 50s tourist trap. Step right up, that'll be $6. And when the tour bell rings, you gotta trust your luck. no hypertension or vertigo. If you want to dive in, then mystery hole.
Shopping, dining, beautiful lakes and rivers, and a monster? Welcome to Braxton County, West Virginia. Centrally located, Braxton County, West Virginia is the ideal place to visit. Natural beauty and recreation abound with 2 beautiful lakes for easy kayaking and canoeing, and many hiking trails. Did we mention the Flatwoods Monster? That's right. Visit Braxton County, West Virginia's Flatwoods Monster Museum and not only learn about the Flatwoods Monster, but walk in the same footsteps as the people who witnessed it. Nearly all of our attractions can be found within a few miles of Interstate 79. Visit us online at braxtonwv.org. That's braxtonwv.org. Braxton County, West Virginia. Center yourself here.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
And we are back. Thank you for joining us this evening on Conversations from the Darkside. I had to put on my spookiest screen to bring in our next caller, a man who has been down many dark and desolate highways. He's seen it all. He's done it all. He's back for the 4th week running. Give it up for our buddy Spartan, a.k.a. the Pat. What's going on, Pat?
Not much. Amazing introduction. Thank you so much.
Yes, the Pat. I'm giving everyone Brent's gimmick now. So, Pat, I've known you for quite a while, my friend.
Yeah.
And you have been in some wacky affairs. You've done some crazy stuff over the years. What do you have for us in the realm of ghost stories, Pat?
You had me thinking all this past week, and like Flack said earlier, you know, he doesn't know if he would ever be comfortable with blaming, oh, it's just that zany ghost again, you know, and then cutting the commercial. But around our house, I mean, if I'd have grown up with someone like a brother or sister who got freaked out, or a parent who got freaked out, maybe I would have gotten freaked out. But you knew my parents and most of my siblings, and we just didn't care. So we kind of got to the point to where you didn't think about it anymore. And I think a lot of ghost stories have kind of drifted out of my immediate memory just because I didn't think anything of them at the time. And so this week I've tried to jog some of them back in, and one that I think of is great is because it involves so many people. When it involves one person, there you go, but when it involves like 6 or 8, you got something good going. At least my grandma used to tell me the reason, if something's haunted, if there are spirits, you know, if any of this is really out there, they don't like change. You know, they're stuck where they are, maybe because they feel comfortable there. And so if you were to buy a house, let's say that was haunted, and you came in and gutted it and remodeled it,
Mm-hmm.
you if there was going to be activity, that would kind of be a trigger for it. So as we said in the past, the back side of my house was a doctor's office. The front side was a funeral home. And and if I'm thinking part of the upstairs was actually like the doctor or the nurse or somebody lived there, like rented an apartment out on the top, because there was a different access to get into the top part of the house, at least a section of it. So right around Christmas time, my parents always made a big deal about Christmas, and my mom had a rule that if you knew somebody who didn't have anywhere to go, no one deserved to be alone on Christmas. So you brought them to the house. So every year, everybody would show up. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Everyone would either show up with their date or with a friend or with somebody who they worked with or whatever who was going to be spending Christmas alone. Everybody kind of showed up on the day before Christmas Eve, 23rd, 24th, with the person, and they just stay all, stay over and have Christmas dinner and everything. Stay for a couple of days. And we just ran the house like that. It always was just a big thing. And even, after, I got married and we moved away, we still kind of always ran the house like that. I remember when you have that many people in a house, sleeping arrangements get crazy. So everyone ended up changing rooms just about. And my sister was sleeping downstairs on the couch. My other sister that flew in with her husband, they ended up sleeping in my other sister's room upstairs. We had a room that wasn't a bedroom that we turned into a bedroom. So, basically within 2 weeks, everything got decorated for Christmas, and now all these rooms had changed, and all these strange people were in the house and everything like that. No one wanted my room because I had eclectic taste, and I think my dirty clothes hamper was actually an old pine coffin. But that's a different story.
Yeah, everyone's got one of those in their room. Just have a coffin they use for a dresser.
Well, I made it for a Halloween party, and because I used to work in a woodworking shop, and it ended up being so cool. I didn't want to get rid of it afterwards, and it had a lining in it and a tap you could fill with ice and have a beer cooler, and I didn't want to.
Which monster are you? Are you the Frankenstein or the Dracula?
So you remember that thing, don't you, from the Halloween party?
Are you kidding me? I can't remember that stuff. Are you nuts?
No. Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It was either that or the tequila that we drank out of it. One of the two. Anyway, that's why you can't remember it. But anyway, I went to bed one night. We were all stayed up late talking, house full of people, laughing. Everybody went to bed. So I get up the next morning, or, late morning, and I come downstairs, and I just roll downstairs like nothing's wrong, walk through the house, walk through the kitchen, and everyone's gathered in the kitchen. And my brother-in-law, who's one of the most logical people I've ever met in my life, he was in the military, he was, computer tech, he's the anchor of logic, when you're talking about something. He's sitting at the table with this weird look on his face, and my sister's sitting next to him, horrible looking face, like she hadn't slept at all, and her hair's messed up, and they're both just sitting there kind of stunned, and anybody else is sitting around them, and I'm like, wow, hey, what's up? And he goes, so glad for you to join us. And I was like, what's the matter? He goes, did we wake you up last night? I was like, no. He goes, so no one woke you up at all last night? I was like, no, not that I remember. And he's like, what happened? Him and my sister went to bed, and they were sleeping in the other sister's room. Well, the sister that was downstairs that normally sleeps in that room came upstairs and woke him up. She didn't come in the room, but she kept just yelling, hey, get up, come on, come downstairs, get up. To the point that it worried him, and he got up, and he went to the door, and he opened the door to the hallway to see what was up, and it was my other sister was standing there. He goes, but I was really sleepy, and I didn't have my glasses on, and something didn't look quite right. He said, but when I looked, she quit talking and just walked down the hallway. So I went back and got my robe on, and, and he's telling the story, and woke my other sister up, his wife up, and said, we got to go downstairs. He said, why? He goes, well, your sister's home from work. She needs us downstairs. And she's like, she didn't go to work. She was just downstairs with us like 2 hours ago. He goes, yeah, no, your sister, she's dressed like a nurse, and she needs us downstairs. And my sister goes, my sister's not a nurse. She doesn't dress like a nurse. There's an old nurse that lives in the house, so there's a ghost that lives in the house, and everybody always said looked like a nurse. And at that point, he just lights are on, but nobody's home anymore. He's just like freaking out. he got up and looked at the ghost and talked with it and tried to go back to bed. So anyway, so he gets her up, and now she's freaked out because now she's awake and she can hear somebody, "Hey, get up, come here, get up," and it's a girl's voice. So anyway, they get up and they're searching through, and my bedroom's at the other end of the hall, so I'm sleeping. You know, it's nothing new to me. I hear voices, I hear people milling around. I mean, it's about, we got a house full of people. I don't care. So anyway, they get downstairs, but it pestered them all night because they were in the wrong room. You know, so once they got downstairs and sat at the table, everything upstairs quieted down. It was fine. But, you know, he's like, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in anything like that. I don't believe in spirits. So but that was a ghost.
What? So you're convinced that was a ghost he saw?
He's completely convinced.
Yeah.
I don't know. My sister didn't have a nurse's outfit that I'm aware of, and why would she be wearing it on Christmas Eve at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get him out of bed?
And if your sister does, you're probably like me. You don't want to know about it.
Yeah. But he described it as the white shoes with the old ones, you know, with the crisp folded cap on the head, you know, with the white buckled belt, like the really old school, prim and proper nurse type thing. So
yeah, the old formal outfits.
Now,
yeah.
Pat, which house was this again? Was this that Main Street house?
Yeah, it's on Main Street.
That is a creepy house. All right, I mean, listen, I've been in this house. So, because, I mean, to give it some text, some background of what you're hearing, because this is the second story we've heard. The first one was about your staircase ghost. This house is ancient. And this is the same one that we dug under the foundation for because it was falling in. They dug out the foundation on it and saved it. I mean, it's a historic house.
It was built in the 1880s.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's got weird rooms with different colors in it. There's a green room and a pink room and a red room or something like that in that place. It's a real unusual house, and isn't there a bunch of rooms in that place too, Patty?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Downstairs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus a thing under the stairs. And then in the upstairs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 closets that lead into the attic. So
see, that's
a couple of walk-in places. Yeah. So yeah, there are a few places up there.
You know, it occurs to me that I actually looked at that house today when I was taking my son down for the town's trick-or-treat downtown festival today, and now I'm even more creeped out because I can. That creepy house is just right down the road. So. Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, I want to jump in with a quick story.
Yeah, please.
That kind of relays to something that Pat mentioned, which is about how it seems like ghosts sometimes are drawn out because of change, you know, because they like their patterns, they like the places they tend to stay where they're at, you know, and that sometimes renovation or things like that seems to bring out that kind of activity. One of the most haunted hotels in the country is right here in Oklahoma City. It is the Skirvin Hilton Hotel that was built in 1911.
Was that a guy's first name?
It was his last name.
Oh, okay. Even that, it's creepy. That's a creepy name.
Yeah, it was W.B. Skirvin was his name. And this is a big, giant hotel right in the old part of downtown Oklahoma City. And as the legend goes, and some of this they've proven to be true and some maybe not true, I don't know. But apparently Mr. Skirvin had an affair with one of the maids that worked there, and she got pregnant. And so he locked her into one of the penthouse rooms on the 10th floor and kept her there, hid her there, and at some point she ran and jumped out the window, fell to her death while she was pregnant. And people driving by the Hilton or by the Skirvin Plaza, have reported seeing people up in that window on the 10th floor, even though they don't really rent that penthouse out anymore. So it's kind of become this local legend, but the best thing about this is that in the early 2000s, they decided to renovate the Skirvin. Of course, this is like a really ritzy hotel with big wood banisters and everything, and they started updating it, and they started getting a lot of reports of ghost activity. People started reporting things like noises and doors and things like that. But the best part about the Skirvin Hotel, it is located right across from the center where the NBA team plays, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
And so because this is such a fancy hotel, when teams visit, a lot of times they stay in the Skirvin. And so this is actually listed on the Wikipedia entry for the Skirvin Hotel. But in 2010, the New York Knicks came here and they lost. And in the post conference, or the interviews after the game, they blamed it on the ghosts. He said it's because the hotel was so haunted that they couldn't get good sleep. And then a year later, the Chicago Bulls did the same thing. They said their doors were opening and closing, and they were hearing sounds. And then the same thing when the Miami Heat. And there's different things. You can look up some of those stories and stuff. There's been teams now who won't stay there because there was in Oklahoma City is where they have the national softball, the women's softball tournament every year is here in Oklahoma City. And there's been a couple of really strange upsets or players getting hurt or things happen, and they all stayed there at the Skirvin. And so now a lot of teams won't stay there because of it's so haunted. So
I will say I believe the Bulls. I believe the Miami Heat, but the Knicks, I'm not buying it from them because there's no way that the ghosts could cause them to lose all those hundreds of other games. So that's the one thing about it. That is wacky right there.
I will tell you, for our 10th anniversary, my wife and I got a room at the Skirvin
Oh,
Plaza.
that was my next question. So how'd it go? Without giving too many details.
Well, no, it went fine, and the next morning, as we were going down to the breakfast, we didn't hear anything, we didn't see anything, but it's definitely made up to look like a really old time classic hotel. So it's a really cool place to go. And we went down to the breakfast area, and my wife said, "Hey, there's the ghost of Motley Crue," and we looked, and it was actually Vince Neil.
He was actually checking in.
No, he was having breakfast down there. And so I was like, "There's not a ghost. That's Vince Neil." But
he is a ghost of his former self. We will say that.
Yeah, that's probably
one too
true.
many breakfasts for Vince Neil.
Yeah, we didn't see any ghosts or whatever, but I would love to go back down there again. And maybe I'll get some of that ghost hunting, those little devices and stuff, and go search, wander up and down the halls.
On the
go ahead, Patty.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
On the flip side of that coin, what if someplace you're sure is haunted isn't haunted? My grandfather, being the chief of police, used to tell me all sorts of stories. And this house is not there anymore, but I could show you in town where it was. There's an old lady that lived in the house, was a family, and then everyone left and moved out, and the old man and woman lived there. Then the old man passed away, then the woman lived there by herself. And then she passed away. Really no one else to own the house, or I guess maybe they only had one kid and they had passed away or moved away, or anyway, the house was never really claimed. Nobody did anything with it. So people were like, well, hey, let's somebody's going to buy it. Well, every time you would drive up towards the house, you kind of approach the house like coming up a hill. And every time your headlights would shine in the front of the house, you would see the old lady looking out the front window at you. And no one wanted to buy the house. Because, there were people who I wasn't old enough to remember this, but I spoke to many people who said that, that lived on that street. They said, they came home, 5 nights after dark, 3 or 4 of those 5 nights, that lady be looking out the window at them. Regular.
It's funny that you mentioned also the those stories that get passed down, someone told me and someone told them, and those kind of stories that get passed about.
Well, this was, I can show you where the house was. I mean, I knew people that saw the old lady.
sure,
I knew
yeah,
people
yeah.
that went to her funeral. I mean, I knew everything, you know, about this, so I knew it was legit. But a gentleman went up and looked at the house. He was a photographer, I think, and he bought the house. And people were like, "Oh, aren't you afraid? You know, it's haunted. It's haunted." He's like, "No, it's not. It's old." And they're like, "No, it's haunted. You can see the old lady in it." This is the only part that I have trouble with, explaining exactly how this works. But a long time ago, I mean, I guess the house was probably built. It was torn down or bought and torn down, and something else built in its place in the 50s or 60s. I mean, the place was built in the 1800s. The glass was leaded. You had lead glass. And what the photographer knew or thought was he went up to the house with a flashlight. And he said that if glass is a certain size with a certain quantity of lead in it, that it acts almost like all the things they used to slide in the old cameras to make the photos. I can't think of what they were called, like the plates.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
actually, over time, it got an impression.
No, during a lightning storm. She was looking out the window,
Oh.
and if there was a flash that was so bright
So it left like a physical impression.
that it
on
imprinted on the lead plating.
Oh, well, that's craziness. And that's
And
what people
imprinted.
were seeing.
So that's when your lights hit it the right way. Now, if your lights didn't hit it at the right angle, it wouldn't show. But if your lights hit it directly straight on, where the angle at which the flash came, then you'd see the picture. So he went and he took that piece of glass out and like donated it somewhere. You know,
I think it ended up on Hermsky's bedroom, and then that was the shadow people.
Maybe that old woman got hit by a car. That's what happened to her.
So,
Yeah.
That
I don't know
is-
what happened to her.
That is
But it was actually
wacky.
the whole thing was because the glass had too much lead in it.
That's something.
Aaron, before you go to the next break, Chad was saying that you might have a story about sometime that the two of you went to a cemetery and
Oh,
were looking at a casket that was
yes.
above ground that you
Yes.
might want to share.
Yeah, well, yeah, what the heck? Well, we'll get into it. You know, me and the Chad have been buddies for a long time. I don't know what possessed us, but one night in Huntington, we decided.
I know.
We decided. Do you remember why we did this, Chad?
Yes, because you were doing tombstone rubbings.
Oh yes.
At that time.
Listen, I went out with this chick, and she was
Can you
into.
clarify, was that rubbings or robbings?
Well, no. Well, it's
Yeah,
funny you
we
should mention
had
that.
Quite a harvest that year.
So she'd got me into taking charcoal and doing these tombstone. Listen, I like this girl. All right, I don't have to go down this road. I do. If she was like, "Hey, I'm into like planting dirt," I would have been digging up a bumper crop.
Right,
all right.
we've all been there.
So-
got to explain.
Anyway, but I kind of dug it, and so I guess that I didn't know that's what we were doing, Chetley. But we went to the cemetery in Huntington, and I remember the night in particular because it was not a real cold night, but the cemetery we were in had these kind of rolling hillside, and it was real strange. It was a full moon, and we were just wandering through the cemetery in the middle of the night like idiots. And Chad, you stop me if I misremember something. And we came upon the first thing we saw there was someone else in the cemetery. I do remember that. Far off in the distance, we saw this guy.
Yeah, that was kind of tripping
Yeah.
you out a little bit.
We saw this guy
honestly.
cresting the hill in front of the moon. He was way, way off, so I didn't think much about it, But I mean, it was something to keep in mind. So anyway, we come across a grave, and it's open, and there's a casket sitting beside the grave. Okay.
Above ground.
Yeah, above ground, on the ground. And I told the Chud, I said, "Listen, man, I dare you to go over there, and lift the lid on that casket, And he wasn't doing it. He's like, "I'm not doing it, man," And I said, "Come on, it's an empty casket. They're probably getting this grave ready to put some poor sucker in, So he wasn't doing it. So I was like, well, so ultimately I went over and lifted up first I sat down on the casket to tie my shoe. I remember that because I had a very blasé attitude about this casket, and clearly I'm a jerk because I didn't realize until I picked the lid up. There's a dead guy in there. There was a man in the casket that was above ground.
There was a corpse in this casket.
Yes, a corpse.
How desperate were you to go out with this girl?
Well, I didn't know. Listen, if I had known I was in the same graveyard and there was a corpse just hanging and banging above ground, I would have found another date. You know what I'm saying? I told Chad, I said, time to go. I remember saying those exact words, and I looked over, and coming over the hill, here comes a guy. You know, and this all, you know how this stuff all happens. So we hauled as much honey as two big guys can do. Got the heck out of there.
Hold on, you missed something.
What did I miss?
Well, when you came over to me to tell me that there was a guy in the casket, I was like, I was basically like, seriously? And Aaron was kind of dumbstruck at the time, and I was like, look, nobody's ever going to believe this story. What you need to do, I said, you've got like your toolkit and your pliers out in the car. You need to go get them and like clip this guy's finger off as proof.
Yeah.
And Aaron was like, what? There's no way I'm going to do that.
Yeah, Chad wouldn't believe me.
You would just take a selfie, but you're going to steal one of his appendages.
Chad wouldn't believe me.
This is before cell phones were really common. This has been quite a while.
Chad, do I remember? I remember something about the guy's shoes. Did I lift the coffin lid up to show you the shoes, or did I know I saw the guy's shoes on him because I remember remarking, "There's just some nice shoes." Yeah. So
you were so taken aback by finding out there was a guy in it, and me telling you to go clip off a finger.
Yeah. So it was. That's certainly not a ghost story.
It can't be a lock of hair, or a button for the shirt. It's a full finger.
It's not really a ghost story. It's just a story about two bored idiots on a Friday night. You know.
Well, you gotta consider
nothing's changed, by the way.
I mean, he's not gonna miss it either way at this point.
Fair enough.
Hey, listen.
You just have to consider that it's probably a felony.
Well, yeah, So
we were young. And
Actually, it's a missed a finger.
Oh. Listen, I've got a note here. I want to read a couple of these things I read from the chat here, especially after that joke was made. I got to get something. We need a palate cleanser before we go to break. Our good buddy Super Tech Boy mentioned, he wrote, when I was a teen, I was walking home from my friend's house late at night, pitch black darkness, and I always ran past this one creepy park. And one time, as I was running by, I looked over and saw what appeared to be someone in like medieval monk habit. You know the kind. I was like, nope, and just kept running. There were stories of secret tunnels in the village that led to and from the priory so monks could escape persecution. Not sure what I saw. Super creepy. Right there's what you saw, my friend. You saw some creepiness in that place. I noticed here that Techboy also mentions the Seelbach in Louisville, which is I've been actually there. I've partied in Louisville a bunch of times, and it says there are tunnels underneath it where Al Capone would make his escape. There's actually a hotel in Honey, where it's in Point Pleasant called the Lowell Hotel. And it's a riverfront hotel that had secret tunnels in the bottom of it so people could escape to the river. And it has quite a haunted past. I've toured it a few times. If you're ever in Point Pleasant, it's amongst the cool things to do while you're there. Check out the Lowell Hotel. With all that said, we're going to take a quick break so we can rearm for the next round. So please stick with us. And if you have anything to add, feel free to send me a text, a voicemail, write me a note, or join us here in the chat. You are listening to Conversations from the Dark Side. We'll be right back.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
That's right, Jim. We're here on the grounds where the most recent Mothman sighting has occurred. And I gotta say, it's pretty creepy out here. It was last seen around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, terrorizing 2 elderly ladies. The poor old ladies were just trying to enjoy their bingo night when Mothman appeared out of nowhere. Oh, shit.
Do not fear the Mothman. Please leave all windows and doors unlocked when you come to visit Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's the world's only Mothman Museum, the premier destination for Mothman fans. The Mothman Museum is the only place where you can see the largest collection of props and memorabilia from the Mothman Prophecies movie, and read rare historical documents from the Scarborough Mothman eyewitnesses themselves documenting what they experienced that fateful night on November 15th, 1966. The museum is located right next to the Mothman statue on Main Street in Point Pleasant.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
And we are back for another round on Conversations from the Darkside. We have on the panel right now our good buddy Chad, the frazzled one. We've got our good friend TSI Matt, our good chum Pat, and of course joining me tonight, Rob Flack O'Hara. Some interesting stuff tonight, gentlemen.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes, sir.
I have something to interject real quick.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you were with me at the time, but it was on one of our Mothman tour, or one of those Mothman shoot, what is it? I can't think of the right word, but when they had the well, when we went up there when they were doing the Mothman events up there,
yeah,
and we did a tour of the Lowell Hotel.
Yeah.
Were you with me the time that we were upstairs and there was like a closed down section of the hotel on the other side?
I know about that area, yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'd actually mentioned this at the time, but while everybody was looking around, I looked over there and I could have sworn I saw a girl over in that other section.
Really? You know,
yeah,
I believe a girl
like
was
creepy,
killed up there, and
like
this was well after.
Looking girl.
No kidding.
And I don't remember if I mentioned it at the time, but when I saw that, I kind of had a weird vibe, and I was just kind of...
Well, no kidding.
Felt off balance the rest of the time we were in there. I don't know if I mentioned it because I thought I was just losing my mind or something, but I definitely remember that.
You know, Super Table has mentioned that he's never been to Point Pleasant. He's only driven through. And since we're talking about ghosts, and I'm going to... I know you guys have seen some commercials for Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but if you stop anywhere in this state, that's definitely the place you want to stop. For starters, it's conveniently located right beside the border to 2 other states. That doesn't hurt. But it is a real creepy town. Of course, everyone knows about the Mothman who lives there, and they've got a Mothman museum, but there's other stuff that's happened in Point Pleasant, including the collapse of the Silver Bridge. Very mysterious collapse took place in the early 60s. In fact, I believe, Pat, you're I think it was your grandfather that was working on that case back in the day?
Yes.
And
yeah.
I remember you tell the people about what he found on the bridge in the water.
Well, what they had to do was everything was considered evidence, even associated with if they could pull it out of the water or off the road leading to or from the bridge, it was considered evidence.
Pat, give us a little bit of backstory about this, because I never heard of this. So did this bridge? It was was it a main thoroughfare? Or something?
It was the main thoroughfare leading across the river. From one side of the canal to the other side of the canal, and it was the only bridge. What would you say, Aaron? About 25 miles before you got up to Winfield?
And to put this in perspective, the bridge runs directly into Point Pleasant, and this occurred right around Christmas in the winter, and it was
right around rush hour, rush hour as you get there, about 4:35 o'clock, I thought.
And it was cold. It was cold. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, so the bridge was packed, and it just began to shake and collapsed. There's no explanation. Although people said they believe they saw, moments before its collapse, the Mothman fly from the bridge off into the woods. That's where a lot of the Mothman story comes from. Can't give you any information on that.
There's another aspect to that, which is Point Pleasant was the host of a very large battle. All right,
that's right.
Where Chief Cornstalk, which is a local, I mean, he was a big deal, was basically double-crossed and killed, and his son as well. And he cursed the town of Point Pleasant, allegedly. So anything bad that happens there, you've got two scapegoats. You can blame the Mothman. It's funny, the Mothman's sort of a baby face now. He's not so much a heel. And Cornstalk, I mean, it's hard to be mad at him. He got screwed over. So the two people that cursed us, you can't even be mad at them. That's the sad thing.
Yeah. So
it's interesting,
thank
though.
you, because you had the fort down there.
That's right.
So,
There's a
that's
fort.
part of the Cornstalk curse.
But
so.
the whole town has a creepy vibe. It's
Yeah,
where
it's just a weird
rivers
town.
meat, right there, and so it gives the town a real weird feel. Plus, the town looks like it's stuck in the '60s. It never changes except for when stuff shuts down. But
the canal drains into the Ohio right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also the bunkers.
Yeah. Tell them about that, Chad.
You know more backstory on that, but
Well,
I remember when we were looking at it, those things were creepy in their own right.
Pat, you know about the bunkers. Give them a quick synopsis of those.
Those were built during World War II, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, because they genuinely believed that the Kanawha Valley, which is nicknamed Chemical Valley, would be a target for bombings, because a lot of nitroglycerin for the war, a lot of those things were actually made in the Kanawha Valley.
Right.
So they
and we were on the list of.
They would come right up the river.
Yeah.
They just follow the Kanawha River and just bomb periodically all the stops along the Kanawha River, right up to stop short of Kanawha Falls, up that way. So, but that's fine. But that's why. But those bunkers were made to protect. Well, that's why there was the Naval Ordnance Plant.
Right.
Was down there in Point Pleasant.
Ultimately,
where they made ordnance for the U.S. Navy.
Yeah.
Bombs and explosives.
When we refer to this place as the bunkers, where think in your mind gigantic cement igloos that are buried underground. So all that you see is the tippy top of the igloo and a tunnel that goes into them. And I'd say they're probably about 20 yards circular, Pat, something like that, and with an entrance that you could walk 4 wide into most of the entrances. And the funny thing about the ordnance facility there is that the war ended before anything was stored there, so effectively they wasted their time. But what they did have
over at that storage facility, but the Naval Ordnance Plant.
Right. I'm talking about the storage facility. And so what's happened there is that the place has become like a Superfund site because there's a bunch of chemicals and stuff that have leaked into the swamp. So picture this in your mind. This is right near where they first saw the Mothman, okay? So you've got cement bunkers underground buried with God knows what in them in like a infected toxic swamp in the woods. So this place, you see all kinds of weird stuff that comes out of here, and it's quite a creepy spot. Anyway, that's my plug for Point Pleasant. If you ever get down this way,
well,
go ahead, Pat.
So
there's a reason you're not on the PR committee, Aaron, for the town there.
I love that town, but you got to call them like you see them.
It's the creepiest place on earth.
It is.
Well, yeah, it is weird. It has a weird feel about it. But the police didn't have any area large enough to store the evidence because they had to pull everything.
Yeah.
So they used the Naval Ordnance Plant parking lot.
And we're talking about the cars that went down during the Silver Bridge collapse.
Around it with wire on top of it and everything like that. So my grandfather had to help walk the yard every night while all the evidence was being stored there. They had to keep an eye on it to make sure that nobody tampered with anything. And he would walk by cars and the trunks would be popped, on the cars, and there'd be groceries still in bags in the car. And
gifts.
He said it was.
Yeah.
They showed up, if I'm not mistaken, I think I don't know if they showed up there, if they took the bodies out beforehand or got them there and staged them and then took everything out in an organized fashion. That one I'm not wasn't clear on. But to walk through there at night for months and months, and have everything just cars just windows halfway rolled down, you know, everything just like the people just got at them and left them, you know, sitting there, pieces of the bridge, everything just all laid out in this parking lot, trying to put everything back together and figure out what happened was, he said was really disturbing, which a side effect of that, Aaron, and you know a little bit about this from where I told you before, but that was the only bridge to get to Point Pleasant, unless you went back up that road about 20 miles.
Yeah.
Probably about 20 miles. And it was, that bridge collapsed. So there was no reason, once you left Winfield, there was no reason to drive down 35 unless you were a farmer and lived down there. There was nothing.
How long did it take them to replace that bridge?
They never replaced it. They built a bridge in a whole other area. In fact, the remnants of the Silver Bridge, the base of it, is still in Point Pleasant, and it's got a marker where it stood. But yeah, they never actually rebuilt the Silver Bridge.
They ended up just after the investigation and everything like that, they ended up rebuilding it, just building a new bridge at a different location. But my grandfather, because he was on the police force in one of the nearest towns associated to this, he would get calls because robbers and bandits would sneak down 35 and like stage wrecks or like lay down beside of the road or whatever and get people to stop and then rob them and kill them.
Yeah,
you know,
I've heard that. That's super creepy.
He got called over there one day because they found 3 bodies were hanging in a tree by the side of the road. They'd been robbed and hung up in trees, and so they ended up having to patrol that really, really heavy, you know, to the point of, you know, if you see someone on 35 after dark, shoot them.
That road is still super creepy.
And it's still labeled the most dangerous road in West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken.
And there are wrecks there, and I kid you not, there are like 4 or 5 wrecks every 2 weeks. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so, yeah, that's the haunted highway down through there. It is one creepy thing. Listen, I want to jump to a quick break here. I've got a guy on the line here, a good buddy of ours. We're going to bring him in to hear his tale, his frightening tale. We will be back in 2 shakes. Stick with us, folks. More ghost stories to come on Conversations from the Dark Side.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Here in West Virginia, we've tested all of our activities for maximum family fun. Everything has been tested and retested to make sure your West Virginia vacation will be the best your family has ever had. So call today for more information and test out West Virginia for yourself.
Summertime fishing with Dad. Running down a new trail. Paddling free in the wild. Exploring as a family. Experiencing something for the first time. And loving it. Whatever they are, we all have favorite memories. Come make some with your family in Nature's Mountain Playground, Pocahontas County, West Virginia. Call 800-336-7009 for your free 40-page visitor's guide.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
All right, welcome back to Conversations from the Dark Side. We got a new roller in. It's our good buddy, Texas Foosballer. How you doing tonight, Tex?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
Real fine, Tex. Now, I know the last time you called into the show, you really had a good tale about your granny. That was one that I've actually talked to several people about since the show went off the air, about the that whole principle or the whole belief system with the egg. When it was very interesting. What do you got for us tonight?
Well, it's a little bit off topic, but it relates. I've got a story to tell about. Well, let me kind of back up a little bit. In the summer of 2006, I was rekindling my passion for retro things, computers, and comic books, and started going to garage sales, thrift stores, trying to rebuild my collection from when I was younger. Some of the things I had gotten rid of that I always regretted. And so, it dawned on me, and I think I was kind of like, why didn't I think of this before? But it dawned on me that, hey, go check your parents' attic for any old things that may be, up there.
I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing.
Yeah. So I was excited, and I went and I looked in the attic. Didn't really find anything at first. Nothing that I was actually looking for. I did find some cool other objects, like an old train set and some of my dad's old Vietnam War memorabilia. So some of that stuff I found. But, I was just about ready to give up, and I noticed that there was actually a second attic, one that I had never seen before, even as a kid, living in that home. Yeah, I was really quite a surprise to find it. This home, actually, that's a whole story in itself. It had a lot of neat aspects to it. It was built like in the early 60s. It was about 4,000 square feet, somewhere in that area. It was a pretty large home, built solid, with cedar wood and, real construction, like not like how they do nowadays. And I found, living in that home many years, growing up there, a lot of like hidden stuff, like hidden compartments, hidden rooms, a hidden closet. Under one closet was a safe built into the foundation that nobody even knew existed there.
Whoa.
Yeah, crazy stuff like that. That house was just really it's got its own story. My parents bought the house like in the 80s, but it was built in the early 60s. And for that neighborhood, it was like the show home. It was the big one. And, the ones that the salespeople would show to the potential buyers. Well, long story short, when my parents acquired it, they had bought it from some kind of medical organization where they had actually been using the home as like I'm going to use the wrong word here, but for lack of a better word, like an old folks home. It's like a retirement home where people needed some kind of medical assistance. Right. So there was a bunch of sick older people living in that home.
Like a nursing home.
Yeah, exact. Thank you. It was a nursing home. It was like a makeshift nursing home, I guess, but not really makeshift. Anyhow, my parents ended up buying it. They got a pretty good deal on it. We lived there for many years, and as years went on, I found different weird things. But there was always something odd about that house. Like, for example, in one particular room, if you stayed in that room, you would get a rash, like a really nasty rash. Like it was, and nobody put the dots together, but I eventually figured it out. It was connected to that room. Like, why that room? So I don't know if somebody just had a really bad rash condition, that was their ailment, and it's just the disease stayed in the room somehow, or if there was more to it than that.
That's why.
But yeah, it was. Nobody liked that room because you would get a rash if you stayed in that room. We turned it into the guest room. But anyhow, I found this attic years later when I was trying to find old comic books and stuff, and it was a second attic. Like, oh wow, another hidden thing in this house. Cool. So immediately, as soon as I opened the door, the hidden door to get into this hidden attic, I had an ugly, awful feeling like, you shouldn't be doing this. Stay away. This is wrong. And I also have to explain, I'm not really a superstitious person. I was actually more on, I always sided with Darwinism and not, following the path of religion or even supernatural. I did play D&D. I was a Dungeons and Dragons player, but I played it from a strategic point of view. Yeah, I was just there was some people I played with that were on their off nights. They would do Celtic practices and things. They were really they were all in. But I wasn't like that. I was more scientific. So I'm not really a believer in these kinds of things. I told you guys about the story with my grandmother, and that I kind of like looked at it from a practical point of view, that was just coincidence. I never really looked into that too much, just kind of blew it off. Well, here's another one. So anyhow, I'm going up into this attic, and I'm finding all kinds of old, like really old dust bunnies, and just like mirrors and like those candle holder things, and just all kinds of old stuff from like the 50s and the 60s. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Well, I make my way to the back, like, where's the gold? I'm looking for the gold. And I come across this painting. It was covered up in this like really thick leather, like canvas thing. So I'm pulling it off. It's all crusty, old, spider webs everywhere. I'm getting kind of like, ready to get out of here because I'm coughing, my eyes are watering. But I pull this cloth, this big heavy leather thing off of this, what turned out to be a painting. And immediately, like, I had an awful feeling, like, get out, get away, you don't want to be here, get away. Like my instincts were kicking in, and I almost like left. I almost, it's like that panic feeling, like when you feel like something's not right and you want to run away, like if you're in the woods and you get scared and you want to run away, or that kind of feeling. So I had that feeling. I wanted to run away. I was like, get out of here. But I stopped myself, and I like, you're a grown man now, what are you doing? So I'm looking at this painting. And the first thing I noticed when I, focus in on it and look at it is it's destroyed. You can't make out the portrait anymore. I could tell it's of a lady, but it's like the oil painting, and the oil is all bubbled up and cracked. It was just, from the heat of being in the attic, I guess. But I grabbed it and I looked at it, and I just had this awful feeling like this is, like if you're holding something that you're not supposed to be holding, you want to throw it away. That's the feeling I had, but I had no logical reason as to why. Like, I just didn't want it in my possession. So it was so overwhelming. I put it back, I put the cloth back on it, and I left it alone, and I never looked at it again. And I, made my way down out of the attic. I grabbed a few things, brought it with me, told my mom, like, wow, did you know there was a second attic? Look at all this stuff I found. Oh, really? What? And, they were getting ready to go on a trip to Las Vegas, and my mom and dad were leaving, and they got their tickets and everything. And my brother lives in California. They were going to go visit with him too. I didn't think anything of it. Well, like within days, all these creepy things just started happening, which I still to this day I'm going to say coincidence, but what's the whole point of this talking show? To kind of talk about these things. Well, the first really creepy thing that happened was and I didn't even make a connection to the painting at all, but our beloved dog passed away.
No,
he just died. Yeah, and that was really sad. It's hard to, he's a member of the family. Love him. But he passed away. I had to, and my parents had left to Las Vegas, and I had to call my mom and let her know. It's like, oh no. And then my wife's aunt passed away. I was like, wow, that was like the next day. Literally every day for like a week, someone passed away. I got a call, some kind of notification, friend from high school passed away, another relative passed away. Like, all these people are passing away. And I'm like, man, this is just crazy. Every day I get a call, I get some kind of notification somebody's passing away. So I tell myself, there's nothing to it. Just put it out of your mind. Just forget it. Just don't let your imagination go wild. Don't draw these connections where there's no connections. Well, like literally a week and a half after finding, maybe not even a week and a half, just over a week after finding this painting in the attic, I get a call at 3:00 in the morning from my mom in Las Vegas. And she goes, Jeff, I have some bad news for you.
Oh, man.
Your dad just passed away.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's another story where, like, hey, man, when somebody passes away that's close to you, you look at all kinds of ways to look at it. Am I, why did this happen? Why? And so that's another relative, close relative, even closer than my grandmother, honestly, that passed away, that there seems to be some kind of circumstantial aspect to it. So, that bothered me for a long time. Like, was there something there? Why did all those people pass away one after another, starting with, our beloved family dog?
Did you think to point to your trip into the fake attic or the second attic that did you think there was a correlation right away, or is it something that dawned on you like years later?
No. After the fourth phone call that someone had passed away, that was just too much. Like, I had that, it was an overwhelming feeling in the attic looking at that painting, that I felt like there was some presence there, but I wanted to convince myself it was my imagination. You're a grown man. That's your imagination. You believe in Darwinism for for all intents and purposes. You're not a believer in the supernatural. I am now somewhat converted, if you will, in my older age as I look back and look at things. But at the time, I didn't want to make the connection. But it was almost impossible to ignore. It was every day. And, when it ended with, and that was the last death, by the way, it was my dad. But after that, I had to look at that. I couldn't, not look at that connection. But I still didn't want to believe it. I forced myself not to believe it. And to this day, I don't believe it. I just thought I'd share the story of that monumental, another coincidence in my life of some kind of connection with a close member that's passed away. So that's what I was trying to get at earlier. When you have a close family member die, you think about it for a while, like why? You look at all the different, what could have we done different? Anything like that. But I almost ask you to think about when you think of someone who's close that passed away, go back and look at, was there anything there that might have been connected to that? Something just to look at it from a different point of view.
I gotta ask you, whatever became of the stuff in that attic?
We left it there when my dad passed away. It wasn't maybe 10 years later. My mom sold a house, and nobody ever went into the attic, and we never went back in the attic.
So,
again.
for all we know, it's still there.
Yeah, it's a hidden attic. I don't know if the new owners even know it's there or not.
Now that is a creepy thing to think about. That somewhere there's a bubbled portrait waiting for someone else to stumble across it.
I think I would have salted the picture and then burned it to a crisp.
Yeah, but you should stay away from matches, Chad. We've heard about that tale already.
Well, I know, but still, that right there, it sounds like there was. See, that's something else. I don't necessarily think that in a lot of instances that there's actually ghosts still active and wandering around, but just like figments, like impressions can be made. Like if something bad happens in an area, it can leave a bad vibe or a bad,
sure,
for lack of a better word, a bad aura that can affect other things. Just like kind of a negative energy that's still in the area. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative energy. It can also be a positive energy. But I think any big life-changing events or anything that's to the extreme can have an impact on the environment around a person.
I can understand what you're saying. When you think of something like that, it sounds sort of ludicrous. But I remember hearing or watching a show once about recordings that were made in pottery. That people had, that when people weren't used the spin wheel to make pottery, they had set up grooves that you were able to listen to. This is pottery made thousands of years ago. It seems ludicrous, but you can see how that could happen. And when it comes to stuff like energies, or the soul, if you will, one would wonder if you could make those things exist. If they could be burned into an area, just like you'd have burning on a monitor, or a sequence even burned in. That's what people perceive as ghosts. I mean, it's an old theory, but it's still one that is interesting to think about.
Well, also kind of looking back at some of the stories this evening, I mean, is it possible, like, other than like ghosts necessarily being present and being an active participant in whatever's going on, like if somebody goes to a house that say bad stuff has happened in, somebody else buys the house and they remodel, well, they're tearing up something and letting some of that energy kind of flow free. It has to go somewhere.
Interesting theory.
And it's leaving like figments. It's letting like figments out, or letting like negative energy out that's been imprinted in something else.
I mean, I'm buying it, to be honest with you. Listen, when I moved into this house I'm in right now, before there was any furniture in the house, I slept here one night, and I could distinctly hear someone whistling as they walked through the house. Now, I don't hear it now. I haven't heard it for years. It was just the first couple of times I lived here. But I did hear it. So when we came through and pulled out the walls and the floorboards and whatnot, could we have released some of this pent-up energy that had been stored there? And you never know. I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. What do you think, Flaxter?
I think you ask the New York Knicks. They'll tell you.
No kidding.
It goes up in there. No, I mean, whenever people pass away, I mean, there's obviously something to human body that is above and beyond the physical part. You know, I mean, there is our consciousness. There is, you know what? I always, this is a dumb comparison, so bear with me, but no, I always, like when I'm flipping channels, I'll stop on these shows like Ridiculousness or World's Dumbest, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And you'll see these clips of people that get hurt, like, you know, they'll hit their head really hard, or they're on a skateboarding on a rail and they fall straddling the rail. Every time that happens, I get this hit in my stomach. You know, I get this feeling in my stomach. Now, I mean, I don't think that's paranormal, you know what I mean? But there's some sort of weird exchange that happens there where it's like, you know, something is happening that we don't, you know, it's not just like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but you know what I mean? Like, I just think like when people are alive and people are dead, there's a difference, you know? There's some sort of consciousness, that energy, whatever that is. And so, you know, where does that go? Does it just stop? Does it get stuck in a painting? Does it, you know, who knows? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Foos, you had something on your mind?
Well, I was just kind of going to elaborate on what the frazzled one said and what you were talking about with energies and imprinting of energies. There was something I read years ago about that's why mirrors are considered so mystical, because you know, when you look at it from a physics point of view, they're reflecting energy, you know, a light pattern, and there is some of that gets retained or burnt in, you know, especially older mirrors with how they were manufactured. So whatever a mirror has seen in its lifetime, that there's a residual piece of that energy in the mirror, and that's why mirrors are considered mystical. So I thought I'd just mention that there was some truth to that in a way with mirrors.
Pretty neat. Listen, we're going to take one last break here, everybody, and then we're going to go around the horn with the panel here. You've got one brief moment here. If you've got anything left to say, feel free to pop something in the chat, call up, drop a message. However the mood strikes you. We'll be back in 2 shakes to finish up with Conversations from the Darkside.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
Welcome back to the final segment of Conversations from the Darkside. It's me, Amigo Aaron, joined by a great panel of guests tonight. I want to go by and talk to these fellows one more time to give them a chance to relay their interesting angles on tonight's topic, ghost stories and Halloween traditions. Let's start with our good buddy, the Chudster, frazzled one himself, Chad. Chad, what can you relate to us in this final segment? What's on your mind?
Well, one thing that, yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
One thing that I did want to kind of bring up and kind of mention is just the fact that like Halloween these days is nothing like it used to be.
Yeah.
It seems like for the most part, Halloween is just a mere shadow of what it used to be. Because like when I was a kid, everybody got into it. I mean, there weren't all the rules and all the setbacks, and people just had a blast. But it seems like it's been toned way, way down, even before the COVID stuff. And it's actually kind of depressing, and for me.
What do you think? It's funny, myself and the Flack, we're having a little conversation about this before the show came on the air. What do you remember? And I'm going to ask this to each of you guys. This would be a fun thing to go around the horn on. What do you fondly remember from Halloween as a child, and what do you not so fondly remember, Chad?
Well, a good example, like when I was a kid, and I would go out trick or treating. My dad would take me out, and we would basically, like, as soon as dinner was over, you would just hit the streets, and you would go all over the place. I mean, we'd be like out till like late, and I would come back with so much candy. And the thing is, everybody was doing that. There were kids all over the place, and I mean, there was a lot of crossover. You go to a lot of places you hadn't been to. You'd see a lot of people you hadn't, and so forth. But these days, it seems like they've toned it way down. It's either it's too short for starters, and also a lot of it shifted to them doing like little events. It's like having gatherings for kids and stuff, but like the old school ways of going out and trick-or-treating for like hours on end and just having a blast, it's not there anymore.
Interesting. So what about you, TSI Matt? You're younger than the rest of us here. Do you remember there being much of a difference when trick-or-treat came around at your house?
Well, I grew up in the country, and we really didn't celebrate Halloween.
There you go.
It was just another day.
Y'all didn't have a hootenanny or a barn dance or something like that?
No.
I had to
Not
ask.
really. I didn't really get into anything until, I think I dressed up once when I was as a clown when I was a kid.
And then you made it a career.
And then, beyond that, it was, at Brent's back in like 2010.
Oh, wow. That doesn't even count. So you, not celebrations going on. What about you, Tex? Do you remember what it was like to trick-or-treat? Was it different then?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in the 80s, and, best time to be alive, in my opinion. It was so carefree and so dangerous, We would group up together, all the neighborhood kids, and we would go to neighborhoods looking for the richer neighborhoods, and we would stay out all night long till like midnight. After midnight, we'd come home with large bags of candy, and worn out and tired, and then we'd make ourselves sick eating candy. Nowadays, like my children, I can't even get them to walk 2 blocks with, we're ready to go home, and they'd rather I buy the candy.
Yeah, I understand. Now, Pat, we grew up in the same town. Do you recall? Yeah. I'm interested to see if you and me mesh of what you remember. What do you remember about trick or treat then versus what? And is there out in your neck of the woods? Are they trick or treating out your way?
Yeah, they're gonna trick or treat tomorrow night.
Yeah, same here. So, what do you remember from back in the day?
Oh, you dressed up, and you put some effort into a costume, too. I mean, you didn't just ham and egg it. You busted your ass. You made a good costume because you wanted to impress, and then you would, when you were a little kid, you just took your pillowcase, and you'd go out, and I filled a whole pillowcase up before.
Oh, yeah.
And come home with, literally, it looks like you're carrying a pillow in it, huge. You'd throw it over your shoulder type thing. You made a killing, and you walked all over. I mean, because it was a small town, so you knew somebody everywhere. And if you didn't know them, like a brother or sister or parent knew them. So like you could go down 8 or 10 streets. Well, if I just go 2 more, I'll be at my aunt's house. Or if I just go do 7 more, I'll be over at Billy's house. So you just kept on going. You went everywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you.
You came
on
home
that.
late, way past when it was supposed to be over with, and you were beat, and you were tired, your costume was sweaty, and then you sat down and made yourself sick eating candy.
Yeah, that's it.
And then
you had candy for weeks.
The next day, and you took candy to school the next day for lunch. Like that was your lunch, was a big old thing of candy, and then you divvy it up like cigarettes in prison. You'd be like, I'll give you 4 of these for 2 of those, and 7 of these, and and that was the big deal because you get some cool stuff. I mean, you get people that are giving out a whole candy bar. That was the stuff. A whole candy bar.
Yeah.
Or occasionally you get a coupon for like a Happy Meal at McDonald's back when they served the Happy Meals with cookies in them. And things like that. And
some people would make stuff too, popcorn balls and cookies.
Yeah, and you weren't afraid to eat it.
Yeah,
like there was something wrong with it.
Caramel apples. We had a few of those around here.
Yeah. In fact, you knew certain houses you went to, like some of your mom's friends, the older folks or your grandparents' friends, where you knew they made like good quality. Like you had to get there early, and they give you like a little plastic bag. They like put a bunch of different cookies in it and like tie it up and hand it to you. And you're like, yeah, this isn't going in the bag. This is going in my pocket.
Yeah.
This is a top pocket find. We're gonna keep this with us. This isn't gonna see the house tonight.
That's you're bringing back a lot of memories. So now I want to pop over to Flack. Flack, we talked a little bit before the show came on about the differences, and you were kind of telling me a couple tales from your own family. Now, what do you remember from back in the day versus now? What's changed?
Well, I will say that one of the things I think that's changed is when kids come trick-or-treat to my house now, either the parents are standing behind them or they're standing out on the sidewalk. You know,
Yeah.
I think by 5th grade, maybe we were on our own. I grew up in a neighborhood that was 6 blocks wide. And, maybe, I mean, if there's 10 houses on every street for on the end, so that's, 140, 150 houses like that. And my mom would say, bye. And my neighbors that would be outside, and you would, you created a little Halloween clan, and off you went. I mean, if there was a year in 5th, maybe 6th grade, I had this costume as an old man. I had on like a flannel shirt and overalls, and I had this dumb old man mask.
I did the exact same thing. Yeah, the
we
hobo.
went up and down. Yeah, every street, up and down, up and down. I mean, I had, the pillowcase. It was heavy. And when I got home, my dad had this werewolf mask. And I was like, hey, can I borrow that? And he goes, yeah. And I switched masks, and I went again. And we were going out. And, I mean, we were unsupervised during all this. And I remember one point they were like, you see this tree over there? There's big kids hiding in that tree. They're going to jump out and try to get your candy. Like, there were kids that would chase you. I mean, it was just, it was safe, but not safe. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like, someone might try to get your candy, but nobody's going to kill you, right? So, but I just remember it being the greatest night of the year where you were like, it was after dark and you were out running around and just having a great time. I mean, my kids today, well, of course they're older now, but when they were younger, they started all this stuff with like the trunk or treat. It was like, here's a safe alternative. Come to this parking lot. I was like, what is that? And then the daycare set up a thing, and then they have a thing at the high school. By the way, I'm gonna interject real quick. A local high school has a thing where your kids can come trick or treat, and the cost of admission is a bag of candy. So when you walk in the door, you hand a bag of candy, and then they just run to some other room. So, like,
that is the weakest.
Yeah. Right, because you're not going to get a bag's worth of candy while you're there. So you just get your own candy, But yeah, there's just all those alternatives. And then there was one year where my kids had, like the week leading up to Halloween, done trunk or treat in the neighborhood. They had done Haunt the Halls, which was the thing at work. They had done the high school. They had done Haunt the Zoo, where they went to the zoo. And then on Halloween night, my kids were like, we really don't want to go. We got enough candy, Dad. And I was like, you get your butts out there. Like, you're not throwing in the towel now. No, sir. Like, this is Halloween. This is the night, I just couldn't believe that they would do that. And yeah, when I see the kids, there's a lot fewer kids that come to the door, especially over the past, gosh, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. It just seems like it gets a little bit, smaller crowd, and a lot more store-bought kind of costumes. I think is a big difference. We were always like, my mom, like as a kid, I remember I saw this plastic Chewbacca mask. My mom cut me a deal. She's like, you can wear that mask, but I'm making the outfit, and she made this like brown foot pajamas, with furry hands. And then I had the plastic mask, but it was always, something you would do yourself. And now it's, just stuff off the shelf.
It's
one
fun.
year,
go ahead, Chadley.
Sorry, I was going to say 1 year I went to C-3PO, so that
has
been a good mix.
You know what? I'm going to post my if you're one of the Amigo supporters and you're on the Discord in the confessions of the Darkside channel, I'll post my Chewbacca picture.
It's funny that because you guys are talking about all these costumes. I will say one difference for me is I always had a store-bought costume, and so and then in the 70s. What that meant was the old plastic smock and the plastic mask with the rubber band on the back, and I remember getting these. I'd go pick a costume out. I never got the super expensive one. I'd get I'm not. Listen, we weren't loaded with cash, and I wasn't like demanding an awesome costume. I would just pick the one I wanted, and then you wore the. And I know this has become a cliche now, this joke, but it's true. You wore the mask, like let's say you were Batman. You wore the Batman mask, and then you've got the smock with a picture of Batman on it, and you're thinking to yourself, would Batman wear this? No, you look like an idiot. And they were also unsafe. They were hot. Pat was talking about getting sweaty in your costume. No kidding. The nose holes and the eyes were not wide enough on those masks, so you couldn't see anything. And something else that you guys mentioned that was true is that trick-or-treat took place a lot later. Like, you never went out during the day.
Yeah.
It was always night. And it would go till 10, 11 o'clock or later,
Aaron, there's a great documentary out there about Cooper and his Halloween costumes. Ben Cooper's that brand.
Oh yeah, I've got some of his costumes on my mantle over here.
Yeah, and it tells the whole history about how they came into popularity, how they got certain licenses and stuff, and it's really good. And of course they show all those great costumes from the 70s and 80s that a lot of us grew up wearing. So it's really nostalgic. Yeah.
You'd get your box and you'd get the thing. The thing is, the box always had the mask on top. You couldn't really see what the smock was, but you knew you were boned when you put it on. Something I wouldn't have mentioned because we were talking about the Halloween traditions kind of changing. I think you're looking at there's two big differences between now and when I was a kid. Flack, you mentioned one where parents aren't as willing just to let their kids go roam around the roads like they were. I mean, I was like you guys, 4th or 5th grade, I was on my own. We'd go out in a big group most of the time, and you would just go out. You didn't have any parents. I mean, some kids would have little parents there, but not a ton, And then, and you would go out and staying out all night. When I say that, I mean, you'd home by 11 or so. But I mean, no one thought twice about it, and people would, as long as that porch light were on, it was candy time, brother. And you'd go out there and take a chance, even if you weren't sure that they were giving out candy. You'd still knock on the door. So that's one thing that's changed. And another thing I think changed, and this happened, I don't know, 10 years ago or maybe a little bit longer ago, is that Halloween stopped being about the kids and started being more about the adults and the young and the teenagers and the young adults with parties and stuff. Everything sort of shifted gears. And I think it's in conjunction with the fact that there's a safety issue with the kids, is that a lot of people love the idea of Halloween because it's a great time to party. A lot of people just like to party, wear their cool costumes or sexy outfits or whatever. And I think we lost something there. And then thirdly, I think COVID did no one any favors with Halloween the last couple years. It's made it, you can't hardly do anything anymore without the specter of COVID, the true haunting of Halloween, always over your back. And even like last year, they had a COVID trick-or-treat at the waypoint, sort of like what Flack was saying. You had to pay $10 to take your kid around in a car to get a couple pieces of candy per person. It was ridiculous, and it wasn't fun. I mean, who wants to trick-or-treat from their car? Answer: no one. And I swear to you, before I started the show tonight, I just came back from the Hurricane Downtown Trunk or Treat Festival, and there were 10 million people at this thing with their kids. Tomorrow night's trick-or-treat, and I guarantee you, if we have 5 kids come by, it'll be a miracle. Because parents took their kids to this. It's convenient. Their kids get candy, and then they're done. Because they don't want to walk around with these kids. So I think some of it, a little bit of it, is a little bit of laziness. What do you think, Chad?
Well, I think honestly, part of it too, another solid reason that Halloween is not what it used to be is because I remember when I was a kid, I would get excited. All the other kids in school would get excited. We would just be counting the days to go out and just hit the pavement and get as much as possible and just have a good time. Now the kids are like, you mean we actually have to go out on the streets and walk around?
Yes.
Isn't there an app for this? Yeah.
I think you're right, dude.
Aaron,
it's not there. And the sad thing is, the next generation or two that pops up, they're not going to have any of this. And like you said, the teenagers and the older people are into the parties. That's because we still have some of that spirit of the past where we knew Halloween was a big thing. But this latest generation of kids growing up and the next generation after, they're not even going to think twice about Halloween. They're just going to be like, meh, okay, whatever.
I remember in elementary school on Halloween, or if it was on the weekend, it would be the Friday before or whatever. But I remember on Halloween we got to wear our costumes to school.
Yes.
And then they would take us around, and they would parade you to the other room, and you would come around. Oh,
if anybody wants to see Flack as Chewbacca and Miss Piggy there, I've put it on the screen for you to check out. There it is. Who do you recall who Miss Piggy was there?
Oh, that's my sister. That's she was Scrappy Doo.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see them because her hands are up. That's Scrappy.
So there's
okay.
a story behind this picture is that my mom said, put your hands up, like Chewbacca, and then my sister thought that she was talking to her. So she's doing the exact same thing I'm doing. But yeah, my mom was.
It looks like Chewbacca just came back from overhauling the Millennium Falcon. He was in the engine working. That's what was happening there. That's classic stuff.
By the way, sweatiest costume that I ever had, which you've actually seen this in Aaron and Matt too, I believe, was the elephant.
Oh yeah, yes. You wore that to one of Brent's. My brother, the Brent, used to hold these parties at his house, and he still has them occasionally, and they were always costume parties. We always had a good time at these things, that's for sure. But it's hard, again with COVID, it's made it difficult to to do the party thing anymore. Because of that, but I mean, I guess hopefully it's almost over. We can only hope.
I remember it was the first, 2020. I remember on Halloween night, I was like, are people trick or treat? So I put my lights on, our bowl of candy, and then, the doorbell rang and I opened, and then these kids and I was like, do I have a mask? Do you have, I didn't know what to do, and I even saw online people were making these slides out of PVC pipe. Did you see that? Where they would make like a 6-foot slide, and they would slide candy down to the kids or whatever.
Yes.
So it was a weird year, but hopefully, man, things are on the rebound this year.
Very good. Oh, thank you, Tex, for popping in. That's nice of you. Listen, we probably got to take this thing and put to bed. I'm going to go around the horn here. If you've got anything you want to add before we take it to the house, let's start with you, Tex. You got any final thoughts here on Halloween?
Just everybody stay safe out there, have fun. Remember, it's for the kids.
Very good, Tex. What about you, Patty?
It's Halloween. It's not Fall Festival.
Yeah, you got that right, brother. I'm right there with you. TSI Matt, what do you got? Any final thoughts on this holiday?
Well, I did have another story I wanted to share.
Let's hear it. That is the season.
Okay, while it's not really Halloween related, there are some spooky things in it.
Go ahead.
And it involves a trip I took with some friends of mine to Cedar Point, of all places. And I'm saying this as it happened, as I remember it. It started out, it was a really foggy morning. We left just before dawn. We're going to spend 2 days. We crossed, I lived in Huntington at the time, and we crossed the river over to South Point, Ohio. And as we're coming down the ramp to get on the main thoroughfare there, see something, and all of a sudden, it runs into the windshield.
Okay.
So I'm like, I look over at Ken, my former roommate, and one who was driving, and I was like, "Was that a bat?" So we stopped for gas there, and as it turns out, it didn't hit the windshield; it hit the windshield wiper, and actually stayed there. And yes, it was a bat.
Did you kill it? Was it dead?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did it have Leslie Nielsen's face on it?
Yeah. Oh, God. So you and your friend hit and killed a bat in the fog.
Yeah. So we found a stick and got it off of there. And anyway, went on, and it's super foggy, and we ended up getting lost and ended up over in Kentucky at one point, which is the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, I was going to mention
we need
that.
to go. We come up, and there was a bridge that closed, and we had to turn around, and anyway, we're going through, and we end up running a red light at one point and almost getting hit.
You need a new driver, my friend.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
So,
driving with Ken was always fun. I was on a few excursions with him.
Yeah. So anyway, we get up there, and the rest of that day goes fine. Well, the second day, we go to the water park. And one of the rides, it's a big raft you go down, and it's supposed to be this relaxing thing. Well, I make note of the sign, don't really think too much of it. There's a weight limit of like 800 pounds. Well, I'm a little over 200 at the time, and so it's another guy, and then the other two were 275-ish. But anyway, I added up once, and we were like 200 or 300 pounds over that combined. So we get on this raft, and first of all, the poor girl getting us going has trouble because, obviously it doesn't want to move.
Yeah.
Well, so we start getting going, and like, hey, let's hold up our butts off the thing so that, it doesn't slow us down. Well, it turns out, we kind of thought about that backwards because, gravity will overcome the friction quite easily. So we're going around. The first turn's fine. Second turn's okay. By the time we get going around the third turn, it's like I'm starting to notice, like, wait a minute, the raft's actually going up above the railing, basically. So, and then the next thing is like it just happens. I'm on top of it, looking basically straight down with the guy across from me, and the thing starts to buckle. So next thing I know, I'm going to wham on the slide out of the raft, somehow still holding on to it with one hand. So here I am on my back being drugged by the thing now.
So you were still in the pipe, though, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. And as soon as I go up to the next one, I lose. I can't hold on to it anymore. So then I just kind of assume the learned in the whitewater rafting, crossing my legs, putting my arms up, and just continue down the thing while they're gone.
So you completely fell out of the. So you almost were a ghost at this point.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
It's funny. I've been to Cedar Point one time with my family, and there's a ride there it's like a toboggan ride. You get like almost like a one of those like a toboggans, like what do they call those things at the Olympics? The the long cars to go down the half pipes of the ice, the luge. And they've got one, a bobsled, that's it. They've got one of these things, and I had an eerily similar situation. I was on this thing with my dad, and it slid so far up the half pipe that we were out of the half pipe. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to die here today at Cedar Point. So I guess what I'm saying is don't go to Cedar Point. There's two stories for you. So did you guys make it back home okay after that?
Well, yeah, I'll get there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carry on.
So I come down to the thing, and the lady down there is all, frazzled. Like, how'd you fall out? Like, I don't know. And about to look up, and just afterwards, and there's like kids crying coming back down the ladder or down the stairs. They're scared. And unbeknownst to me, when I came out of the thing, when the thing started to buckle, I fell and accidentally kicked the guy across from me in the eye.
Well done.
Well, you didn't go down without a fight, I guess.
I guess not.
Well, now
anyway,
now you know how the bat felt.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, after that, when we were there, we would look over across, and it looked like there was this humongous building off in the distance, and we kind of wondered, like, what is that? So you'd have to know Ken. It was like, that was just the exact excuse for him to go on a road trip. So we did. We went out, and it was actually a road that follows the Lake Erie, which, interesting enough, is like the mecca of strip malls.
Yeah, a lot
it's like the entire way is just strip malls. But anyway, we ended up finding out it's not necessarily a building; it's a nuclear power plant. So we end up over in Toledo.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So then we start back toward West Virginia, and you have to know Ken. It's getting kind of late, so we're driving along, and Ken's like, if I stay on this main road, I'm gonna fall asleep. So he starts taking like side roads, kind of cattle treadling back across Ohio. Which, by the way, most of that part of Ohio is cornfields.
Ken, thank God he lives now in an age with GPS, where he can.
I mean, there's a separate story with that, but I'm not going to get into that this evening.
That's the one with the farm girls and the sheep. At some point, some stuff go down. Well,
Yeah.
that's wacky stuff there, Matt.
Yeah,
Hey, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we're going through all these small towns, and I swear, it's like every time we go into these small towns, there's like a local town cop that has somebody pulled over. Thankfully, it was never us. But then we come across this one town, and keep in mind, it's about like 2 o'clock in the morning at this point, and we come across, and like there's some guy out working on this roof. There's people like out walking around shopping. And we just kind of all look at each other like, just keep going.
Yeah. There's some towns you're not meant to go through.
Yeah,
no
it
kidding.
was Vamp Town.
Yeah. So then after that, there was a storm we ended up kind of following through, and then finally get through that. And we're going along, and all of a sudden I hear thump thump. And I look over, and Ken has this weird face. I was like, what was that? And about that time, I get the answer. It was a skunk.
That is always bad time.
Yes.
That is not... Man.
So we had to deal with that the rest of the way back.
This is...
Yeah. Really the vacation, vacation to hell, I guess.
This is like one of those National Lampoon films. All this stuff. So did you finally get back after hitting the skunk?
Yes.
I would never take another trip with that guy ever.
Yeah,
Under
no
circumstances. That's wacky. Hey, Matt, while you're talking, one last thing I want to get to. For anyone listening, tell us what's going on tomorrow night on the TeamSpeak Regulars, man.
Well, tomorrow night we have the TeamSpeak Regulars Halloween Spectacular. The pre-show starts at 7:30. I'm gonna hold it off as a surprise.
Oh boy!
Watch it, see what's going on, and then followed at 8 after that. We'll be going live with all of us in costume, playing some Dead by Daylight, some Friday the 13th game, some Phasmophobia, maybe other things. Should be a fun time.
Yeah, that should be a good time. That's over on Twitch at the TeamSpeak Irregulars, all one word. Check us out. We'll be streaming tomorrow night with some scary stuff. That'll be a lot of fun.
You asked me earlier, how's Halloween different? I'm sorry to interrupt and interject on this, but his story about just that sheer surviving the drive through attrition kind of reminded me of it. I had quit trick-or-treating by this point in time. I was in high school. But the high school was having a Halloween dance. and first prize was a big deal. It was a big surprise. It was something, it was tickets to a concert. They wouldn't say who or whatever, and concerts were a big deal back then. Going to the Charleston Civic Center, whoever came through. It was a costume contest. So I said, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to win. I'm going to win the contest. So I started working on my costume as soon as they announced it. They announced it sometime in, I think, September, early October. So my grandfather had like a woodworking shop, metalworking and woodworking shop. So I would go there every day after school for a couple of hours and work on this costume. And in effect, I made a suit of armor. It wasn't actual armor, but it was replicated like industrial plastic that had wrapped in a metallic tape, so that you really couldn't tell that it wasn't like a really just kind of a dark metal. And I measured and fit each piece to me, measured myself, and made chest, back, hips, arms, forearms, things like that. Made a shield out of wood the same way you'd make a table, by gluing the pieces and clamping them together and then cutting it out. So I made that. And the more I made, and the more I was just listening to music and Halloween, it was always be like, yeah, Halloween was cool. That's because we all remembered it that way, and all our costumes had to be great, and we always loved dressing up. And it wasn't like that anymore. So I think that kind of took over. And the more I worked on this thing, the worse it got. And I mean by worse, I mean I wanted a cool weapon to take with me because I had a shield. So I took a softball, and I took a bunch of 16-penny nails, and I inserted the head of the nail into the softball and hooked a chain to it, so I had a big chained Morning Star. Now granted, this was made out of 16-penny nails, like 50 16-penny nails in a softball.
Yeah.
That's deadly.
Yeah, it is. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
And it had about a 2-foot chain, and then a big wooden handle I had carved and wrapped in leather as a grip.
Yeah.
And I could hook it on my belt. So then I was like, well, I want to surprise people, and I don't want any favoritism in the judging, so I made a helmet with a visor. So now you couldn't see who I was. So I had that. And then I thought, well, if I get hot and I take my helmet off, people will know who I am. So I got some material and I sewed an executioner's hood. And so I put my executioner's hood on first, then I put my armor on, and then when I took my helmet off, the executioner's hood wouldn't come off because it was stuck inside the armor and stay on. So I did all this, and I had to be delivered because I couldn't fit in my mom's car. Didn't think about that once I put everything on. My next door neighbor had a truck, so I went and laid down in the back of his truck, and he drove me.
The logistics, you didn't think about that when you were putting together your weapon of death.
Yeah, so I showed up and I walked up to the front door of a high school.
Yeah.
Now you think about this by today's
I was
standard.
just thinking about that with the 10-penny, with the 30-penny. You would never get in with that weapon ever.
I had that hanging on my belt. I had a sword that the blade had I had put it on a lathe. I had carved it out of wood, so it was about a 4 foot long, 3.5, 4 foot long wood with kind of a metallic spray on it and the handle. And I had that stuck down. I could hold it with my shield on my back. In full armor, you could punch it. You could stab it with a knife. You couldn't go through it. It was industrial, plastics. It was reinforced and padded. It was. So basically, I was wrapped in insulation tape and plastic. So it was like 187 degrees inside that costume. I mean, it was. I was the largest insulator ever invented. They said, are you a student here? I'm like, yes. I didn't have to take my helmet off. I had a big old ball of spikes hanging off my hip. I had a shield. And like, okay, sure, you can go on in. You know, here's your ticket for your drink or whatever, the food, or, you know. So I went in. I stayed all evening. There was another guy dressed as a knight, and he had made his out of cardboard. So he ran up and bumped me, and he ran into my spiked ball and cut himself. And then I was like, I'm sorry about that. You know,
he ran into your spiked ball?
Well, yeah, he just came up.
Did you happen to have the ball in your hand, swinging it around when he accidentally violently
No, it was
ran
hooked
into
on my
it?
belt. It was hooked on my belt. But see, I had armor on my legs, so it didn't matter to me. You know, and so then he hit me with a sword, and he broke his sword because it was cardboard as well. I was like, see, that's the problem with, you know, Halloween. You made your shit out of cardboard. You know, that's good for a 5-year-old, but we're high school students. So anyway, I won the Halloween costume contest. I won it, and all I remember is one of the judges was the Catholic priest for the local church. Remember the Catholic church out there behind the pizza place where they had the Irish priest?
Yeah.
That he was one of the judges. I don't know how they got him to judge a Halloween contest at the high school. But anyway, he was one of the judges. So anyway, because I just remember that because he announced it, and they said, you won 2 tickets to Robert Plant.
Oh.
And Joan Jett was opening for Robert Plant.
Pretty good combo there.
And I'm like, hell yes. And they're like, all you have to do to claim the tickets is you have to take your helmet off. Because we want to see who it is. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I took my helmet off and I had that hood on. And I'm like, my helmet's off, give me the tickets. And I took the tickets and left. And that was it. But it was just like, there's no effort. There's no effort like that in costumes anymore. And also, there's no way in the world that sort of effort would be rewarded because we would have been banned from the high school for that. There's just no way in the world they let, you know, people in there with authentic looking maces and swords and shields and actual padded armor.
No one was putting forth that much effort even then. You're one of the few people that would have put that much effort in that. I was sure that the punchline twist of your story would be like that you, at the end of the day, you lost to the girl dressed as strawberry shortcake. I was assuming that's where it was going.
No, I won. But
well done.
It's just like, it was, they just, you know, but now it's just, it's not like, I mean, it's not like that anymore.
No, it is not.
There's something, you don't see pumpkins carved as much anymore.
Well, I went to a pumpkin carving contest just last Sunday that the City of Hurricane puts on. They give you as many pumpkins as you want. You carve them in the park. And so that's the most amount of people you're going to see in the park with knives out. That's not a Friday or Saturday night. I will say that. But yeah, in fact, I've got me and Teresa both carved pumpkins, and they're on my front stoop right now.
And, but now they're plastic knives too.
In general, you just don't see that as much anymore.
You're not wrong. You know, that was a great story there. By the way, just one quick thing before we move on to Mr. Flack. Do you still have the armor?
Well, no, sadly, I outgrew it.
Well, I figured that.
In every feasible way possible.
Well, thank God you took it off first. That could have been real messy.
But I made a set for my. I'm sorry. I made a set for my son. He wanted to dress in armor once, so no. I mean, I still have the specs on how to do it and still get the stuff. So I've made several sets for people over the years.
Thank God you haven't made one for your youngest son now, because there'd be a metal shortage. His son's like 50 foot tall, so very good stuff, Patty. Flack, I'm gonna let you take us out of here with what you've got left. What do you got?
Man, I had 2 quick things, 2 Halloween stories. The first one was just a funny short story, but it was about the last year that I ever went trick-or-treating. In Oklahoma, you could get a motorcycle license, like a legal motorcycle license, at 14. And so I had got my license, and a buddy of mine at school also had his. So we would ride around town on our motorcycles. And for some reason, we got into the Blues Brothers. And so we decided for Halloween we were going to go as the Blues Brothers, but like zombie versions of the Blues Brothers. So we painted our faces white. We had on these hats and these. There was no way anybody would recognize us as being the Blues Brothers, you know. But in our head, that's what it looked like. And so he drove over to my house on his motorcycle, and we had some friends that lived in another neighborhood, and so we drove to that neighborhood, and we parked our motorcycles at the end of this guy's driveway, and we went up and knocked on the door, and a guy came out and he said, "Did you guys just ride up on motorcycles?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Don't you think you're a little too old to be trick-or-treating?" And I just went, "Yeah, I guess so." Like, it did not hit me until that moment, you know. But I was like, I'd already got a job. I was working at this concession stand. I was like, yeah, I got a job. I could just buy candy. I don't know what. like it had not registered in my head that you would outgrow this someday, and that possibly driving to another neighborhood to trick-or-treat would be what informed me of that. But yeah, that was the last time I ever trick-or-treat. That was like the first house, and I was like, yeah, I guess we're just gonna go home. I don't know what to do. That was the last time I ever trick or treated.
I love it.
But it did have a couple of years later. One of the most scariest things that ever happened to me happened on Halloween night. I was, I was probably 16, maybe 17. I had this, I'd got a Mustang. I was driving this Mustang, and I was, obviously, it wasn't trick-or-treating anymore, but a friend of mine had invited me to this party. And it was far enough away, I wasn't exactly sure where it was, but it was over in this part of town that was just like on the outskirts, and I don't know if you guys had this or had anything similar, but it was like an abandoned, like an oil refinery or something, and everybody would warn you, yeah, that's where the Satanists go.
Oh yeah,
like there.
Yeah,
like
we had one of those
This was
areas.
the place, yeah, where the Satanists would gather. Like they would just gather at this old, I don't know, but that was the.
That's where they refine each other's oil for the devil.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, those braziers don't burn on nothing. They got to have oil in those things.
They're all on the same team, I think, somehow, the oil guys. But anyway,
company to the devil, not a far stretch.
Yeah.
So there was this. This isn't it's a weird setup. But there was a kid in my neighborhood that I was not friends with. He was a couple of years younger, so he was more like my sister's age. So I'd seen him on the bus, like the school bus, when I was younger. But we weren't really friends, right? So anyway, I'm driving out to this party, and I'm trying to find it again, pre-GPS days. Like, someone was like, well, go to this strange part of town and go by the 7-Eleven and then go over. Just terrible instructions, And I'm driving, looking for this neighborhood, and I'm like, I know what I'm near. Like, I know I'm near that thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm going down this 2-lane road, and there's nothing out there. It's just, this is before there was neighborhoods out there or anything. It's just open fields and stuff, and I'm driving down this 2-lane road, and this guy comes running down the street towards me. And I just hit my brakes. I was like, what is that? And as he gets closer, I realize it's that kid from my neighborhood. Like, what are the odds that it's this kid? His name was Brad. And I said, well, Brad, what do you do? And he obviously wouldn't know me or my car or anything. And he's just running. And he says, give me a ride. The Satanists are down there. And I go, what? and so, anyway, so he hops in my car, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? He's like, we went down there to go look, and there's like fires, and these Satan worshipers. I was like, are you serious? And so, I started turning around, and then I saw another car coming from that way, and I freaked out. I was like, Satanists are coming to get me. Like, I was convinced, And so I started going back, but instead of taking this main road, I saw this little side road, and I turned, and it was one of those roads that was gravel, and it was just all that combination where it was dark, and then you're driving fast on a gravel road, and now all the dust is coming up and it's blocking your headlights. And I was driving, and there's like this cornfield. I was like in a horror movie. I was just terrified,
Yes.
And eventually that did lead to like a dirt road, but that dirt road led us back to this. I'm surprised that I didn't crash my car, And the whole time this guy was yelling, and it was just such a weird coincidence that it happened to be, some guy running down the street from my neighborhood. But I didn't go back over there for like years. I was so terrified of that place. And now I think like, I'm sure, some teenagers went over there and like started a bonfire. So I'm sure it wasn't, the Church of Satan was having a meeting over behind the 7-Eleven in Oklahoma City, but
hey, you never know.
But boy, that night, I was terrified. And I never made it to my stupid Halloween party. So there you go.
That's good stuff. I'm not laughing at you but I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for you, but I've been in a situation before where I was just out running around and pulled into an area where there were bonfires around and creepy people walking up and down the road, and there was a gathered group in the middle of nowhere, and you're just like, what is this? I know when I was delivering pizzas, what I was doing. I just was trying to take a shortcut. And I mean, way out in West Virginia, you can be out in the middle of nowhere in like 2 shakes, you're gone. And so when you said that, that's what it reminded me of. It's like, when you get in your head, because I could have thought to myself, hey, this is a clandestine drug deal, or hey, these guys are all part of a gang, a motorcycle, anything. But the first thing that popped out of my head was some kind of devil worship. I don't know why,
right, yeah.
Well,
and
they could have been the ones that ordered the pizza.
The funny thing is, I would deliver pizza to biker bars, so I don't know why I would be
Satan has got to eat too.
There you go. Well, that was good stuff. Hey, listen, everybody, I want to thank all the panelists tonight who popped in. I want to thank Texas Foosballer. Thank you for coming in, man. I want to thank Pat, a.k.a. Spartan. I want to thank TSI Matt. I want to thank the Frazzler one, the Chudster, for popping in. And, of course, I want to thank Jack Flack for helping me hold down the fort these last few shows. For those that have asked, this is the last Conversations from the Darkside you'll be seeing on the Amigos Network. However, I've enjoyed doing these, and I think we can probably do something with it. So what I've done is I've started a channel on Twitch just for this show. It's called Convos from the Darkside. Convos from the Darkside. I'm going to post all these shows there, and I've also got a YouTube channel with the exact same name, Convos from the Darkside. I'll link all this stuff up in the Discord and maybe put a couple trailers on this thing when we release it. And sometime in probably early next year, heck, we might get together again and do some more of these things occasionally and put them up. And I'm looking for people that are interested in this sort of fare. If you've got a show you'd like to try along these lines, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about maybe getting you on the network. I'd like to get a bunch of shows on there so we can run some stuff on it. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, drop me a note at thedarkside@email.com if you're interested in maybe trying your luck, having your own sort of show. It doesn't have to be paranormal or anything. I love, UFOs, cryptids, any of that sort of stuff. I'd be down with the clown for any of that stuff, or maybe something I don't even know about. So just something to think about, but we'll be back eventually because I've had too much fun doing these to just give it up. But this is the last episode, and as Halloween is just around the bend, I want to hope that everyone out there has a safe and scary Halloween. Take your kids out, just like Flack. Make them put them costumes on, get them out of the house, and get them kids outside and let them go around the neighborhood. And while you're out there, tell them a few spooky stories. Don't let it be so antiseptic. Make sure that they understand that this is the time for ghosts and ghouls. They need to get out of the house and experience it, because you only are young once, and once that time has passed, you'll be getting together with your friends 40 years from then and telling them about the boring times you had on the crappy holiday, and we don't want that. Thanks again, everybody. We will talk to you guys again on the flip side. I want to also thank Barkbit, who did the music for the show, the tremendous music. I want to thank Duncan Styles, who put together these great graphics I love them. I want to thank Kate Fox. She did a great job doing the voiceover work, which I love. I want to thank Alan. If you watched the pre-show, Alan read The Raven for us, and I played it on the pre-show. It was really neat. So I hope you guys caught that. And we are out. Until next time, take care of yourselves and try to enjoy the daylight. Adios.
You have just experienced Conversations from the Darkside. Until next week, try to enjoy the daylight.